Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever and whenever you're watching this. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to have a great show today talking about serendipity and synchronicity. I'm so excited to have my guest, Nancy Barrows, who is a speech language pathologist. And that is amazing. That is cool. Kenny's here. He says hi. So we were going to start with just talking. Tell us like one or two stories of serendipity and synchronicity, and then we'll see where the conversation goes. While we were in the green room, so to speak, I wrote down some things that I can bring up.
Sure.
If the conversation ever has a lull.
Yeah, as a speech pathologist, talking is usually not a challenge for me, but I appreciate that. And I see Brian also. Thanks, Brian. And I'll get caught up with everybody in comments in a minute. Synchronicity. I actually believe that every moment of my life is synchronous and serendipitous. It's just the way it works. The universe sort of is keeping me on that path and always has, even when I didn't notice it, even when I didn't necessarily believe in it. It's just the way life works. Are there times and places where I've had, more obvious signs from the universe? Absolutely. And as we were talking when I came into the green room, one of the things that's really serendipitous for me, and it's happened in the last, year and a half, was the coordination of the number February 13th. And so I met my ex-husband February 13th at a Valentine's Day singles party. And that number was significant. Of course, that date was significant in my relationship. And then, years later, 16 plus years later, when I was getting divorced, I got my divorce papers and opened the envelope, and my divorce was finalized on February 13th. So the universe really letting me know that I could exhale, letting me know that I had completed it, letting me know that I was on the right path.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, out of 365 days, for it to be the 13th again, I don't think much happens by accident, but certainly not.
Mm-hmm.
And then, years after my divorce, 3 years after my divorce, one of the things that I had sort of promised myself is I wanted to be able to buy a house, because I never wanted my home pulled out from under me again. It was, as you can imagine, I'm sure many people have been in the position, it was really traumatic to just sort of your home disappear in the middle of everything, the place where, your roots are, your comfort, the community, just gone and everything else. And so I found a house in Las Vegas, and I don't live in Las Vegas. I live in Los Angeles. I have a very dear friend who lives in Las Vegas, who went with the real estate agent and said to me, put an offer in. So I put an offer in on a house in Las Vegas that I had not seen. And it was accepted. And I went to see it and loved it and got financing in it was 2 weeks, and I had to wait a week because there's the legal, you have to wait a week to make sure you want to do this. And it closed on February 13th. So in just the past, it started obviously many years ago when I met my ex-husband, but in the last couple of years, the universe has continued to bring me to this place of reminding of the significance of the choices I'm making, and reminding me that the choices I am making and the experiences I'm having and the people I'm meeting are all on my path. They're all absolutely where I'm supposed to be going, and reminding me to just keep doing what I'm doing. And it all happened without any resistance. And I think that's the huge thing for me, is when there's no resistance to things and things are just happening, to not stop for a minute and be like, okay, thank you. I appreciate this. I see what's happening. Would be, it's very hard for me to do that. And I have so many stories of synchronicity, even being on LinkedIn. With the pandemic, as a speech language pathologist, I was forced to see clients via, telepractice. And I have a lot of kids in my practice, or used to have a lot of kids in my practice. And one of the schools that I had worked with, it was a private school here in LA. They, of course, were not on campus, and trying to coordinate doing Zoom. And when they were, sort of back and forth between going to campus and then starting their remote schooling, it became very difficult for me to see the kids that I had been working with. And it was very hard, because for a very long time, I held on to that position because I needed the money sort of mentality. And I had been there for so many years, and I liked being there. But, as with lots of things in life, as your energy changes and you grow, sometimes the fit just isn't, the same. And you need a new pair of shoes, hopefully strappy heels, but, you need a new pair of shoes. And so I ultimately decided, okay, I'm going to walk away from this. And if whenever, at the time I didn't know it was going to be, a year and something later, if it's still there and I'm ready to step back into it, then that's when I'll do it. And about a week later, my best friend Raquel Boris posted on LinkedIn, basically forced me onto LinkedIn. And I give her credit because it was the best thing that's happened to me in a very long time, where she just made a post saying, hey, welcome my best friend to LinkedIn. Here's her name, connect with her, reach out to her, kind of thing. And immediately there was such a warm, welcoming reaction from the LinkedIn community. And I admit I was that person who thought that, like, I have a job, I don't need to be on LinkedIn. Right? I never went to LinkedIn because I'm employed, I don't need a job, and was so pleasantly surprised by what all is happening here. The communities that are built and supporting one another and welcoming and we're embracing me and supporting me and embracing my story and my journey. I tell people all the time, like, it's just shy of 5 months that I've been on LinkedIn. And so what I've accomplished in 5 months, of course, these are not successes I can claim on my own. They would be nothing without the yous, like everybody out there who's ever messaged me, listened to me, talked to me, silently just heard my message and had it resonate with them. But it's possible, right? It's possible to have an impact like that. And again, serendipitous. It came up when I had the time. Now that I had set aside Mondays and Fridays had been days that I would go to this school, I had the time to put into it and I had the space. And with the pandemic, I had this calm within the chaos to see and be aware that this was exactly where I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to be doing. So there's so many stories, but those are two that I love that come to mind pretty quickly.
They're great stories, and you're getting a lot of interaction in the chat.
Yeah. I'm going to try and be good and get all of it. So let's see. I saw Brian and hi guys. Dill.
Another thing I heard with your story was like an attitude of life coming from abundance rather than scarcity.
Yes. And it's funny because I spoke recently and someone pointed out to me how my glass half full thing is really more pervasive than even I had recognized, because when I talk about my history, and then for those of you that are listening who haven't heard me speak before, I just want to give you the utmost permission to receive my story however you receive it. I don't feel judged if you feel disgusted, if you feel anxious, if you feel, curious. I've had all those feelings about my story myself. So please do not judge yourself, and I am not judging, nor am I insulted. But yeah, I was sexually abused by my grandfather till I was 16 years old. And there's a lot that happened after that. But I have this place of gratitude for everything that happened. And actually, that was a turning point for me when I could have gratitude for everything that had happened, the really crappy parts and the good parts, and could see what came of it, and the lessons I learned, and got to this place of, there are a lot of people, men and women, who go through experiences like I went through, and don't make it to where I am. I am so grateful and so fortunate that my coping strategies didn't lead me down a path where I was, addicted to drugs or promiscuous and unhealthy, and, didn't have the support, didn't have the therapy. It was not pretty, it's like everybody tells it their journey. I'm a little bit more like it's a Spartan race, because it was dirty and ugly, and I couldn't do another burpee if I, was told I had to continue living. And yet I found a way to do it and come out on the other side and really be healed. And people ask all the time, no, really, like, I have a healthy relationship with sex. I have, a healthy relationship with my body, and I don't hate my grandfather. And it was interesting because I recently spoke to someone, like, I don't remember ever hating him. I just was not going to energize that. I was going to take care of me and not give him a minute more. And so even in that, where I accepted what happened, what I experienced, as a blessing, right? What came out of that? I wouldn't undo it. I don't know who I'd be without it. And I like who I am. And would it have been nice to have been able to arrive at this place with less trauma and turmoil? Of course, but I wouldn't have. And so for me, the fact that I've made it and I've healed and I can be even that little bit of hope. And again, if I was watching me right now, I would hate me when I was going through it, because really the value in my story is the ugly middle, where, yes, I'm on the other side and I'm doing so great. When I was in the middle of it, I was like, screw you, lady, you're fine. Like, what, like, you don't know what I'm going through. Yes, I do. I've cried myself to sleep on the bathroom floor. I have, fallen asleep hoping that tomorrow I get hit by a bus, or if someone's going to get a terminal cancer diagnosis, like, please give it to me instead. Let them I've been there. And I think it's so important to talk about that, but also to talk about the experiences within abuse that really make people uncomfortable, but also really resonate with people who have had the experience and are terrified to say it, and compound their shame with thinking they're the only one, or there's something wrong with what they're thinking and feeling. This whole idea that every cell in my body was wired for pleasure with sexual touch. And that's exactly what happened. Well, people hearing that, I get that's really uncomfortable, right? It's not easy to hear, but if there's one person out there listening when I speak and go, oh my gosh, like just a bit of commonality, a bit of not feeling so alone, a bit of not feeling so freakish. I mean, I felt so freakish for so long and broken beyond repair. So all of that, I don't remember where we started because I'm really good at talking and then getting off track. So if I did, please let me know. But just, all of it bringing me to a place where I can speak openly, freely, without fear. I understand people say that I'm courageous, and I see that from a perspective other than myself. But for me, I have no fear, so I don't need to be brave to do this.
So then I'm curious, in your work, is that your niche?
So in my work, and again, I think it's all connected. I am a speech language pathologist. I work on communication. I give people voice, which I lost during my abuse. And I work in this area of social cognition, which is, I guess, in what we would have thought of, and people still do, as social skills, how to say hello, how to, read a room, and the reality is I can't teach you all the different greetings and all the different hellos, because how I'm going to say hello to you is going to be different than how I say hello to, a kid at school, or if I'm working with a teen or a 20-year-old, like the way you're going to say hi to a friend versus a potential boss when you go to interview, it's so different. You have to know so many things. I can't just give you a script. And so it fascinated me that there's another way, that if we go into this cognitive behavioral piece and we learn, like, what are the hidden rules and why did they exist? And, what happens when we don't follow those rules? How do the people around us feel? Therefore, how do they act? And all of these places where, I have people come to me that are so desperate because they don't have connection, and they're trying, and they don't know where they went wrong. And, they know that they have friendships that just seem to come and go. And on their end, they feel really connected, and the other person just walks away. And so my being able to give voice, give communication, and give that community to people, because I know, still to this day, my community is what gets me through every day. I'm totally self-sufficient, and that's great. But what brings love and light and laughter and fullness to my life is getting through each day with my community. So for the people I work with, being able to help them find that, being able to help them fit in, get rid of the heaviness, the depression, the anxiety that comes with being isolated. Even now in the pandemic, there's so many of us out there that don't have social cognition issues, but just by being isolated, I guess we can start to feel what it's like for other people who just can't create that. They're lacking the skills, and they've had all this experience that tells them don't try. So definitely brought that into my work. And, my trauma shows up where, without knowing it, I gravitated to working with kids in elementary schools, and I gravitated to an area where it's, the community experiences a lot of trauma on a daily basis. And the kiddos that walk in often, whether it's they share their 1-bedroom apartment with, 3 generations of family, and, where they sleep is not always known, or if there's food insecurity, parents that are worried about being undocumented and what that means. A million different traumas, along with all of the ones that happen, abuse and alcoholism or anything like that. I worked in an area where more people, see, we talked about turning it off and it still wants to reach me. More of the children that I came in contact to were living through trauma than weren't. And so I gravitated to an area where that was the norm, and am fortunate because the kids who needed me most gravitated to me. Mm-hmm. And so my ability to be with them in this place and not assume you're a bad kid. For me, my assumption is, wow, this is a really big feeling. This has to feel terrible in your body. And I believe if you had a better way to express it, you wouldn't be tearing apart this classroom. You wouldn't be hitting me. You wouldn't be, you wouldn't be running away from things. And so given the opportunity to, be the one that sits there while they are, I mean, I've sat with my back to, the classroom door, and the class is destroyed and things are being thrown at my head. And I just am like, wow, I can see it in your body. Like, oh, I can feel this is so big, until they can calm down and let them know, like, hey, I'm here. No matter what you do, I'm here. I'm not running away. I'm going to show up. I'm going to keep showing up with you, and we're going to figure this out together. So all of it, again, came with me. And how do you not see that as blessing? Or some sort of divine purpose, in that, I've had this opportunity to be with so many young people when they are in a place that I was and didn't understand. And certainly the people around me didn't understand why I was acting the way I was, and be able to help heal them, or just let them know they're not alone. And again, my job, sure, I'm in education, sure, I'm a speech language pathologist, but the most important part of my job is creating good humans.
It's amazing. You know what it makes me think about is it's almost like namaste. It's like the God in me sees the God in you, and that you are me and I am you, that we're the same. And so your aura is an aura of safety. Like, kids want to just probably, like, the way I say it is like, get inside you, whatever it is you have, I want it. That at home, and this out of control feeling that I have about throwing stuff around, I don't like it. I'm doing it, but I don't like it. I don't know how to stop it. But you are so calm and welcoming, encouraging. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And again, for a very long time, it was like, that's just who I am. That is, I don't know another way to do it. And then really being able to, at some point, embrace it as, yes, it's who I am, but that's, it's unusual.
Unfortunately, I have to agree.
Yeah.
It is unusual.
Yeah. Gosh. And I think I took that. Yes. My bestie. Thank you. I that means a lot to me, because I know that I can create space where people feel comfortable and safe, and what I'm doing is possible. Like, what am I changing the narrative on sexual abuse, giving people a safe space, and knowing that they can fully be themselves. If I couldn't create safety, then that wouldn't be possible. And so thank you, Raquel. I appreciate that.
I'd like to hear, in case someone is or has, most of the people that are watching this are adults, and many adults have never dealt with it, right? And so what would be your advice to an adult who has never addressed their, sexual abuse, their trauma? And, we think it doesn't haunt us. We think it's, I was, that's so far long ago, it doesn't haunt us. So what would be?
You hit the nail on the head, right? So the piece for me is, it's hard when you're in it to understand it's so scary to think about dealing with it, and the energy and all that comes with it. And you don't think about it when you're living with it day to day, that you're already putting all of that energy, you're already leaking energy all over it. You're walking around scared, or somehow, how you are in the world is so different from people around you who haven't had the experience. And you don't recognize that necessarily, or you hopefully at some point do, and are like, well, I need this to change. But for me, there was so much energy and effort in presenting to the world as someone I was not, and I didn't even realize how much effort and energy was going.
Exhausting, right?
Exhausting. And I didn't see it. And even until recently, when I was on LinkedIn and finally really was public with my story, because I've talked about it, I have no problem talking about it, but it really was this place of letting go of it completely. Right? It has legs. It's no longer a part of me. I'm putting it out there on this platform where there's millions of people listening, and they're going to talk about it without me in the room, and it's going to have its own life, and being able to release that. Even though I had been so open, I was truly, I would say shocked, but I was really taken aback at how much just taking that last step, I want to sit up straighter, and I want to put my shoulders back. And I was like taller and bigger and inhabited my whole space. And I released that heavy, and I released that extra energy that was going into just being in the world with subconsciously of like, I can't share a lot of who I am with people, or why I do the things I do, or, because then I have to reveal this piece. And I held on to that last piece because I work with kids, and people have really interesting ideas about people who have been abused and work with kids. So I would say to people who are starting to get there, I know it's scary, and I know it's overwhelming. And I know it's easier in a way to turn back and go back to using your coping strategies. But a couple of things over time, for me at least, they stopped working. And then I was forced to deal with it, and that's its own trauma. But and it's okay to step forward and then step back. Like, it's okay to go forward, do some work, and be like, oh, I can't, or whatever it is, and then pause. Just don't stop. Pause.
Right.
Find yourself good people. I mean, the therapists that I work with saved my life, and they are therapists who taught me that the therapy space is mine to use however I want to. I wrote a chapter in a book for Nadine Joy, and it was supposed to be out in the fall, but where I talked about like finding your therapist and the struggle to find your therapist. It's so hard to find mental health professionals and get in touch with them. The phone calls back and forth, and the day that you have the energy to do it, and the the you step into your power. Well, by the time you have to do the message and they call you back, and then you finally connect, and then it's like, well, okay, I can't afford that at all. So now what? Starting over and doing it again and again. I called the Santa Monica Rape Treatment Center. If there's a trauma-based, organization where you are, there's a difference between a therapist that is classically trained, or in all the different ways they can be trained, and someone who's trained in trauma. It's a very different experience, and I've worked with both. And the progress I made was really with people who understood trauma. And again, the first therapist I worked with, I literally pulled the couch away from the wall and sat behind the couch because I could not tolerate her looking at me, even if I wasn't looking at her, while I started to tell like details of what I had been through. And it was so, I didn't have the words, and like what I was saying was just the beginnings. It was just hard for me to, gosh, I couldn't say elbow, much less describe some of the things that had happened in my world as a kid. And it got better and easier. And then, I've had right up to Jessica Oifer, who's the woman that I work with now. And most recently, her office is across the street from a Dunkin' Donuts. And I was having a particularly crappy day. And I picked up a dozen donuts, and I went to my appointment, and literally she opened the door, and I'm standing there with a box of Dunkin' Donuts, and I am in my dark, twisty, don't mess with me place. Opens the door, and I just looked at her, and I know my jaw was like set and like, and I said,
don't dare say anything about my donuts. I'm eating these donuts. Not
even that. But I said, and hopefully there aren't kids listening, I said, you're going to eat these with me, bitch. And the beauty is, not only did I feel comfortable saying it, she turned around and said to me, did you get chocolate? And we went in and ate donuts because I was feeling shitty, and I don't know if I needed to feel shitty that day, but I knew that we were not going to have therapy. We were going to eat and just be the whole time. And she was willing to allow me that space and allow me to not try and fix it. And I think there's a whole different discussion for the people who go through it with you, right? So I can give advice to people who, yes, you're here now and you want to be doing something, and everybody's path is different. Again, I'm here. I'm not a therapist, but I do understand. And if the first person you need to tell is someone who truly understands, please reach out to me. Somebody who's not, and I know it comes from the best place, but when you are starting and you're telling people the shock and the pity and right, it's very hard. And we sit there like, okay, all I want is for you to look at me the same way. Like nothing's changed, right? It's okay. We're okay. You don't look at me any differently now that you know this about me. And so there's two conversations, again, for anyone who's experiencing currently, has, wherever you are, if it's the first time the words are coming out of your mouth, or if you've said it a million times, and it just is good to have someone who goes, I know.
At some point you said that what I wrote down is it has legs. It has legs. So are you metaphorically saying that if it has legs, that it can walk away from me? Or is it always going to be like, just go, if you can go back to it has legs? I was amazed by that. The words you chose there. Yeah.
I hadn't thought about it walking away from me, because I think I've gotten to a point in my life where my past is always with me. The difference is I'm not trying to outrun it anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm inviting it forward with me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I like it.
Yeah, I'm inviting it forward with me because there's a lot there. There's so much wisdom that comes from that, and so much empathy and compassion and patience and just a million things that came with it that are beautiful that I'm inviting forward with me. It having legs is more the fact that it's out there doing its own thing, which, again, there's power in one person. I know that. I know that I'm making a difference, but I'm an army of one. And if this is going to change, my story is getting out there every time I tell it. And there's somebody else that quote unquote enlists, right? And now I can't be everywhere all the time, but there are all these soldiers out there, right? All these people out there that are talking and championing. And it doesn't mean you're someone who experienced sexual abuse. It may be someone who hears me speak and goes, wow, why are we letting this still happen, right? Because I was 16 when my abuse came out. I'm 48. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. And we've had the quote unquote cure all along. We need to talk about it. We need to teach our kids, and it's not a sex talk. People are always worried about talking to their kids. It's not a sex talk. I promise you it's not a sex talk. It's a talk that every child needs to hear, not just about the possibility of being abused, but this is your body. These are your boundaries. If anything does not feel good to you, that's all that matters. Doesn't matter what anyone else might think. Right? It's what doesn't feel good to you. It's that when I used to bathe nieces and nephews, when they were too young to do it themselves, I would let them know, I'm going to wash your vagina now, right? So that this is something somebody should ask permission for, right? Mm-hmm. And then when they got older enough and I could trust them to actually wash and clean their body, not come out with dry hair and say they washed their hair.
Been there, done that. I used to do that, yeah.
And say, do you want to do it, or do you want me to do it this time? Right? Because it's their choice, it's their body. And letting them know that it's really every time their choice, right? Just because you told me last time I could do it doesn't mean this time you want me to do it. Maybe you want to do it, and I want to give you that power and control over your body. And to really, as adults, hold up our end of the bargain when we say, if anything doesn't feel good to you, come to me. Mm-hmm. I love you. I want to help you. And we really receive it that way. Mm-hmm. I had a conversation with my brother. His sister experienced sexual abuse. And I said, did you talk to the babysitter about it? And he's like, I said, yeah, why not say to your kid's babysitter, hey, we talked to our kids about whatever you want to say, good touch, bad touch, something that feels good to you, something that doesn't feel good to you. So if they come to you and say anything, here's our expectation of how you handle it, right? And then when we come home, we can deal with it, but we expect you to say, oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing with me. You're so brave. I love you, whatever it is. And not only is that as adults creating more safe space, but if you are a predator and you know that a family has talked to their children about it, there's far less of a chance that you are going to take that risk. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, predators are really good at picking victims. And I don't look at myself today as the kind of woman who would be easily victimized, but I was 5. Mm-hmm. I was 5. It was my grandfather. Mm-hmm. I was 5. My grandfather, had that place of authority. He loved me. Mm-hmm. Right. So, but if I had the permission, and I don't know completely, but if I had the permission to say, hey, this didn't feel good. This happened and it didn't feel good to me. Who knows what would have happened? But I know if we're not doing it, I know exactly what happens. So yeah, it has legs. It's out there. It's out there pounding the pavement. It's out there, doing what I'm doing. It's screaming from the top of its lungs to everyone that can hear, everyone who receives it. And it's allowing for people to identify with it, to hear it, to empathize with it. The call to action is, what do you do with it now? You keep talking about it. You see me speak, tell someone else, hey, go watch this. This was pretty cool, right? Mm-hmm. So many people will say, well, I don't know anyone who is sexually traumatized. And I say to that, yes, you do. You just don't know you do. The statistics are that you know someone. And
what is it, like 1 in 3 girls?
Yeah, exactly.
1 in 5 boys or something?
Yeah, I think it's 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 4 boys.
I mean,
and that's the thing. And those are the people that when you ask say, yes, it happened to me.
mm-hmm. And I think there's all different levels.
And that's something I've been talking about more is, now that I have my story out there and people know who I am, I have to get to these comments. My God, you guys are amazing. I just looked.
Here, let's take a moment to go through all the comments.
Because I've missed a bunch of them. I'm going to have to go back to everyone.
I'll go back to the top.
Thank you. So yes, there's a bigger conversation of what sexual trauma is. We tend to go right to the big bad end, rape and abuse, sexual abuse, but there's a whole nother end of the spectrum. If you're a kid and an adult is exposing themselves to you, that's sexual trauma. You have, I don't know, an adult that's watching porn and is fine with you sitting in the room or invites you to watch, that's sexual trauma. There are so many different places. And quite frankly, I can't define it for everyone because trauma happens when the system is overloaded and feels like it can't handle something. And that's different for everyone, which is why this whole trauma report card is bullshit. Don't measure your trauma against my trauma, that mine was worse because I went through this for 16 years because it was my, no, trauma is trauma. Are there some key factors in terms of my healing and getting to a place of mental wellness because of what happened and the specifics of my abuse? Yes. But trauma is trauma. So if you experience a traumatic experience, you are going to have a certain set of, reactions and emotions and behaviors that come from it. Mm-hmm. So again, let's not judge each other's trauma. It doesn't mean I have space. Again, this place of abundance. Unfortunately, the place of abundance is there's enough room for trauma for all of us. Mm-hmm. And it sounds terrible, but there is, and I'm not going to judge yours because I know everybody's personal journey is arduous when it comes to this, right? When you're changing habits and mindsets and and your chemistry has changed because it's a challenge, it's a battle, and everyone deserves the grace of mm-hmm. knowing they're supported, mm-hmm. knowing they're believed, knowing they're not being judged. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It really is in general in life. It's so important that we come from that place, but if we continue to belittle one another and one another's experiences, we might as well be chasing our tails.
Well, I could continue to talk about this. We're halfway through. I want to make sure that if you wanted to, we can continue on this, or I have other questions and other things. You can go
anywhere you want. If you wouldn't mind just doing a quick comments through, and I will watch later again and make sure I get back to everyone because I appreciate.
Let me throw some of them up. Of course, Kenny is here.
Mm-hmm. Always such a big supporter. Thank you.
And then your buddy Brian.
My buddy Brian. Thank you.
How cool is that? And then Brian put out, I don't know if you were watching this, or if you could see this. He was putting out paging. He was paging yes. all your other tribe to come on. Yes. And then of course Raquel showed up. Bernard, he comes often.
Yes.
To my show, and you must also know him.
I do.
Let's see. Bill Bradford is going to find me a husband.
Oh.
Yeah, he's working on that for me.
Okay. I'm willing to get married again if the person's willing to divorce me every year.
Oh, okay, sure.
I take it very seriously, and I think, if you divorce me every year and decide you want to still be with me, and I still want to be with you, I can make that deal.
Okay, all right. As a coach, I would dig down into that with you, but yeah, there's a bunch of here. Maria's here. Carl is here. Kelly Bryant is here.
Oh my gosh, look how amazing this community is. I'm just
amazing. A friend of mine, Alana, is here. She got lost in here somewhere.
Thank you for
mm-hmm.
All right, so go ahead. We're halfway through. What are the questions? Because I love going to places that maybe my brain wouldn't go. So ask.
Well, I wrote down that when we were in the green room, we talked about signs and that you believed in signs. Do you want to tell us more about that?
Sure. I definitely believe in signs. I think that, actually had this conversation with Kelly Bryant last night, and she planted some seeds in my head. I think that, there are signs everywhere. It's, again, there's some attention blindness. And when you bring your attention to things, you will see them more in your environment. You notice them more. I think the risk is that we interpret signs in a way that only fits with our narrative and don't necessarily think like, okay, well, maybe this is
I agree, 100%.
Right, pushing me in another direction, or, oh, this is really uncomfortable. I don't like this. So let me work it into my narrative in a way that feels good. Kelly and I were talking last night, and she said, yeah, one of the ways she thinks of signs is she will be very specific in putting out to the universe, like, if I'm on the right path, show me a blue butterfly, right? Rather than like, I see a blue butterfly or I hear a dove and that's my grandmother, and my grandmother's cooing and she's telling me that she's proud of me.
Oh, I see.
Kind of thing, which I think both work, but the place where we have to, again, not have to, where the power of signs comes in is if we're willing to accept that they're not all pointing us in the direction that we want to go in, that we're trying to go in. And that sometimes those things, and Garth Brooks, some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's
my gosh.
If everything had worked out, quote unquote, the way I wanted it to, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't.
No way. Me too.
Right.
Me too.
Absolutely. So, I was the get married, get the house, the whole thing. That was my path, and in that life, there wouldn't have been room for what I'm doing now. There absolutely wouldn't have been. There wouldn't have been a desire either. I think it would have remained an underlying, because I've talked about it with Raquel for years, that like, I want to do a TED Talk. I had all these things that I was like, this is what I'm going to do, but there was never any action toward it. There was never any true intention toward it. They were literally wishes and hopes, right? So outside of my control. And now they are things that I am like, I desire, I intend, I expect these things to be.
Okay. So you're saying wishes and hopes have changed to, this is amazing, I want to write this down, to I desire, I expect, you said. And what was the other word?
Intend.
Yeah,
I desire, expect, and intend.
And coming back to a communication specialist, words are powerful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And one of my hashtag is no word is void. No word is void. You put it out there, it means something. You put it out there, it has a vibration, however you think of it. But it goes out into the world and it does something.
Oh, absolutely.
Why do some cultures have 40 words for love?
Right. Okay. So if someone's, what I also heard you just say is that maybe the blue butterfly means yes, and maybe you're just wanting it to mean yes. So it seems like it involves discernment and practice.
Discernment, practice, awareness. Not holding so tightly to the outcome, which is super hard. Oh man. And for many years I was an outcome person because I was a control person. How did my life stay neatly in order? Well, if I controlled everything, then I knew everything and I could predict everything and nothing would happen, but then nothing would happen. There was no room for anything outside of my plan for myself. And, the universe laughed at me a million times and I kept saying, nope, this is my plan. I'm sticking with it. And so, discernment to see like, okay, I'm seeing this now. What could it mean? And again, if you can get into your intuition, another layer of things that we could talk about, and see which one resonates with you. Because sometimes you put the one you want on top of the sign, and if you're paying attention, it's like anxiety provoking and it doesn't sit right. And other times it's like, oh, yeah, that was exactly it. Or like, what's the immediate that came to you? Like, oh, I saw that blue butterfly and I was like, or were you like, there's so many places, but I think it's not being fixed to the outcome and being willing to ask yourself and honestly answer sort of the whole range of what it could be, and being open to those possibilities. So, some signs knock you over. I mean, February 13th, there is really, to me, I guess I could have, yes, exactly, Raquel. If you want to make them laugh, tell them your plan. As soon as you think you've got a plan, ha, ha, ha. And I totally forgot what I was saying, but it'll come back to me if it was important. We'll keep going forward. It'll come back if it's meant to.
I also was distracted. I fight with myself on flipping up these comments because it seems distracting to my guest. And then it makes me look like I'm not fully paying attention, but that one I just had to share. So
No, absolutely. And I've done this on the other side, so I totally understand. You know, like I want to honor the audience that's here, and they're putting comments, they're posting their comments. That's their voice, right? And so I don't want to ignore anyone's voice, but at the same time, how do you remain engaged? And look, it's just I know who you are, so I know that you're engaged. So don't worry about that. So, but again, yeah, I'll have to go back and watch them because it is hard to do both.
Right.
And lots of times I do, and I'm here talking, and then I'm trying to comment on the side. So I'm not right now. So I appreciate everyone who's here. I know I have not said hello. I have not acknowledged you just yet in this moment, but it's coming.
It also reminds me, like, we can go back to sexual abuse if you want to, but it doesn't only have to be sexual abuse. It's everything. Like if you follow your intuition and your instincts, and each person is different. And you mentioned the word predator. So predators are good at being really like the guy next door. Everybody loves him. Like you see on TV, everyone's like, oh my God, I thought he was the nicest guy.
Right. I would never have guessed. And you know, yep. So, and just like I can put that I was really good. Like I'm an Oscar-worthy actress for most of my life. People, I was unremarkable because I was so quote unquote normal. Right. High school president of my class, captain of the volleyball team. I was doing volunteer work for American Cancer Society. I had friends. I was social.
Of course.
No reason to look at me again. I am a thriving teen, right? But predators have good intuition.
Totally. So I used to tell my daughter when she was very young, she's, I think she's 36 now. If it's uncomfortable to you, it doesn't matter if everyone says this person is a good person. If that person gives you creeps, you don't have to sit on his lap. You don't have to go to church with her. You don't have to, whatever your feelings are.
Right. Yeah. Trust our guts. And I think telling her from when she's small is so important. Because the way it works and sort of quote unquote needs to work, right, is when we're young, we're told what to do. We're told how to navigate life as we learn skills. But if we can stay in touch with our guts, and it's funny, for a long time, I'm like, no, my intuition is broken. My intuition is broken. I'm so detached from it. And then I had somebody walk me back, and it was like, no, my intuition, my gut the whole time knew. I just didn't act on it. Act on it. And so, yeah, that being aware of what's going on with you. Again, I was so busy before the pandemic started that I didn't know. I'm an aware person. I didn't know what was going on with me. I had no idea that I needed the amount of downtime that I needed. I was always running around and exhausted and make the plan to go out or whatever, and didn't realize my self-care was doing nothing. I had all.
At this point, we had spoken about that when we were in the green room, and I just put my finger on that as the next thing I was going to ask you.
Serendipity.
But also, let me interrupt for just a second. And this is typical of people that have suffered abuse or whatever. Keep busy so I don't feel.
Yeah,
keep doing stuff so my mind doesn't have time to remember or feel. I'm fine. No, I'm fine. I'm fine. Yeah.
And that's with really all of us who have something that is unresolved.
Yeah.
His biggest trauma or his, whatever, nothing small, but it can be just our day-to-day life. If we have something that's unresolved, we keep moving so that we don't have to confront it. We keep moving so we don't have to be in it. And I had to learn how to be in it. Most recently was when I got divorced. I realized when I moved into my place, like I had never lived alone. I had never before lived alone. I always had roommates or was living with my ex-husband. And so learning to just be, and it started with the TV on, the music playing, game on my tablet.
At the same time.
Oh, of course. All at the same time, and probably eating as well. Because like every possible inch of space had to be like completely occupied with something. And then starting to be like, okay, I can do this. I can look at what's there. I can be curious about it. I don't have to be terrified about it. And nothing says I have to sit in it forever. Just because I invite it in for a conversation doesn't mean that now I'm stuck sitting there with, Aunt Bessie who never leaves. It's like, okay, let me invite you in, have a conversation. Thank you so much. And hopefully we'll talk again soon, right? None of us is meant to be in the intensity of those types of life moments and emotions and events 24/7. Same with grief on the other end, like, grief.
Oh my gosh, I was just thinking about that. Like my mother died when I was 16 in high school, and I have a younger sister that was 13, and I'm really the only one who has that. I'm one of 7. There were 7 of us, and I'm really the only one who has done any like deep work on that.
Yeah.
And everyone else is just fine.
Right. I'm fine. I can function up here.
Yeah.
And then the thing is, when you function up here for so long, it's comfortable and you know it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's like I fell back into it in my marriage, right? I recreated the abuse dynamic, not from a physical standpoint, but certainly from an emotional standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I made sure my ex-husband was happy at every expense. That was the goal, was if he was happy, everything was fine.
Well, then you'd be safe also. If he's happy, I'll be safe. Yeah.
Right. My needs didn't matter. I know how to live on breadcrumbs. I don't need to have a voice.
Totally.
Fine, right. And so you can live surface. And it's hard to drop down into it. But I think, again, if we have self-compassion to say, like, I'm going to open this door. And I've actually had the experience of doing this with myself, where the safe space is that we're on both sides of the doorway. I'm on one side of the doorway, and whatever else it is that's sitting across from me, and it's usually me, some version of me, we still have that safe space where if I need to, I can like, I haven't fully invited you into my space, but I'm willing to see what you have to say, and if it feels good, to invite you further in. And so giving ourselves permission, again, going back to grief, you're not meant to live in that, like, and I think a lot of people who go through grief is like, if you laugh and enjoy something, you feel guilty about it because you're grieving, you should be sad. We can always return to those feelings. They're always there. And I've done it myself, and it's a visualization. It's like, okay, I'm feeling sad right now, or I'm feeling anxious, and I need to, or want to go do this. You know what? I'm going to put this here, and I will come back to it. Here's the sticky note that's going to remind me. I can always step back into this, but it's okay for me to move into something that feels good and joyous and soul nourishing, and all those other fun things that I experience and relish in, and then still come back to where I was before, or vice versa, right? I'm feeling terrible. I'm feeling great. I'm feeling great. I'm feeling great. I walk into therapy. I know, right, that it's going to be a roll up your sleeve, snotty mess of 50 minutes, but I can do that. And it may stick with me. I may choose to have it stick with me. I may have no choice but to process it further, but I also have the potential to just step back into where I was and come back to that, whatever that was that happened that I want to further process, I intend to further process. It's there for me. And it's okay to step into it.
Another two great words you said, joyous and soul nurturing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So many of us have never even had that. Well, we have to figure out what it is for us, and what I wrote down was that I wrote introvert, extrovert, or did you say you're really an extrovert, introvert?
I am more of an extroverted introvert.
Me too. My numbers are very close. Numbers are very close. However, I find as I get older, I need much more time to plug in by myself. Just don't anyone talk to me, And so you said, with your journey, if you want to say, people use that word so much these days, but with the path that you're on, you have discovered that self-care for you is just doing nothing.
And I used to beat myself up about it. Like,
of course.
Right. So like, I should go get my nails done.
That should. That's always there.
Right. No shoulds. That's right. But I should be going to do something that's good for me. And I've never been a woman who loved to spend 3 hours in the salon getting my hair dyed, or I love when my nails and toes are done, and but so often I avoid it because it's just not where my energy is. And what I need to do is go home and get in my pajamas and my robe. And anyone who knows me well and has ever had a conversation with me after I walk in the door from work knows it's pajamas and my robe. Like that's what you're going to get. And to just sit on the couch with a book and do nothing, or, just be in my space is so important to me. And that I discovered that self-care is doing nothing, because everybody always asks the question like, well, what's your self-care? What do you do for self-care? Well, I do nothing. I step back.
Doing nothing is doing something.
Doing nothing is doing something. And it's one of the things I discovered, by the way, in when I was divorced. This epiphany to me was doing nothing with someone makes it something. So I was doing the same thing. If in the evening I was sitting and reading a book or watching TV, it's exactly what I did when I was married. But because there was no one there with me, it made it nothing. I was doing nothing. If I go to the market or run errands and I'm by myself, it doesn't make it nothing. Now, do I enjoy it more when there's someone there? Often, yes. But being someone who is both people energized and people drained, depending on the crowd I'm in and where my energy's at, sometimes it's just better to do it, be by myself. And sometimes it is a symptom for me of depression, and my mood is not in a great place. And sometimes it's really just me acknowledging what I need in that moment, and knowing that that's my recharge, knowing that it's not an escape when I'm in that place. Whereas when I'm depressed, it can be certainly a retreat and escape mechanism.
Oh my gosh. I know. I deal with depression myself so much. So am I depressed, or am I just being lazy, or I'm
lazy. My gosh, right? That's the word. Am I being lazy? Wow. Why is my engaging in self-care that looks different than what the world tells us it's supposed to look like being lazy? Why is taking care of myself being lazy? Why can't doing nothing be productive? Because it is for me. Exactly. And it's funny, because depression is a thing I deal with on a day-to-day basis. Given my entire history of sexual abuse and eating disorders and, all of that, if you would have ever told me that those things wouldn't be so prevalent in my life when I got older, that I can go, and Raquel's here, she can testify to this. I have on many more than one occasion called her and said, hey, do you remember I was anorexic? I totally forgot. And she'll be like, oh my God, that's right. And she lists off the, however many odd eating food behavior things that I had. And we laugh about them now. But the fact that my sexual trauma, my having experienced sexual trauma and sexual abuse by my grandfather for 16 years, essentially, I guess I was more like 11 years, so I was older, is not on the top 10, 20 list of things I identify with as who I am. Can I say it influences me? Yes. But like I said earlier, I'm not outrunning it. I'm inviting it with me, because the ways that soy sauce on lettuce, yes. And popcorn.
But that's not a dinner?
It's not. That's not.
That doesn't count as dinner?
Apparently not. It's not. I love all the beautiful things that it has brought me. But there was a time when I went from victim, right? That whole I'm a victim, to survivor, and being angry and powerful in my anger, to I'm a person who experienced it. My power is in being vulnerable about my experience. My power is in sharing it with other people. My power is in embracing all of it.
Well, that is awesome. And somehow,
I know
it's almost time to close up. And I feel like we could just talk and talk and talk. So we have about 5 more minutes left. Is there anything that you like, closing thoughts, closing argument, so to speak, in court, insights that you want to say? And then how can people get a hold of you if they want to talk to you more?
Yes, absolutely. So, again, this ability to live with gratitude and grace and positivity. I am not a person who says choose to be happy. I think that is, being someone who suffers from depression, hugely insulting. If I could just choose to be happy.
Oh my gosh.
I would not have spent, as many days unshowered, or, making excuses for why I wasn't showing up. But I do believe that we can all choose to have gratitude, and we can choose to find the things that are positive. It's never all negative, even if it's just like, I don't think I'm going to make it. And by the time you have that thought, you made it to the next moment. You did it. You're doing it, right? Everyone, I want everyone to talk. Go away from this and tell someone who heard this conversation and this was what it was about, and start another conversation about it, and have those people, their call to action is, hey, go talk to someone about this kind of thing. So
each one teach one. Yeah,
exactly. So keep talking about it. In terms of getting in touch with me, because I'm a public school educator, I will apologize in advance because I'm different people on every different social platform. The easiest way to get me is, if you're here watching on LinkedIn, is to find me on LinkedIn, in which case I'm Nancy Barrows, and all those letters after my name make me pretty distinguishable from any other Nancy Barrows that may be on the platform. On my Facebook, I'm Nancy Debra, Debra. And on Instagram, I'm actually vibing_with Nancy. So it's all over the place. But again, last thoughts is, anyone who wants to continue the conversation, whether it be because you're in a place of not understanding your own experience or being scared of where you're going, you never uttered the words to anyone, or you're watching and you're curious, right? This is a new topic to you. You've never had this kind of conversation before, or you're someone who has someone in your life and you're starting to navigate this. Thank you, Brian. I see him putting in all of my, thank you. Really connect with me. Send me a message that you saw me here. And I also give you permission to connect or follow me and never have to speak to me, and just follow the content. And if that's helping you, just keep following the content. If that's helping you, you don't have to interact with me. I don't need to know. You don't have to reveal anything to me. Take what is good for you. Please. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Before we close, you said this may be your personal vision, your personal mission statement, your values, maybe gratitude, grace, and I didn't get the last one.
Oh gosh, gratitude, grace, and
oh, so it isn't. Okay.
No, I mean, I say gratitude, grace, and all the time. I mean, abundance and amplifier are other big ones for me.
Okay.
This abundance mentality, and amplify, again, let's don't judge one another. Let's amplify one another. Let's amplify, the love that someone needs, or, hear their story and just hold that space. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Okay, everyone, I'm going to close this studio. Nancy, you and I will still be able to speak for another minute or so. Thank you, everyone, for showing up for Nancy. That is just, look at this. Look at how many people love you.
I know.
Over 100. At some point, I got notified by Restream that I have over 100 comments. So that's because of you.
To you, for being willing and wanting to engage in the conversation, and for, bringing me to your audience and insightfully asking questions and amplifying my story and what I'm doing here in my mission. So thank you. It's people like you that make it all possible.
You're welcome. Okay, I'll see you soon, everyone, and make it a great day. Have gratitude and grace and abundance, and amplify. Yes. Bye-bye.